Hello and welcome back to Real Estate Real Home Stories. I'm Sue Curlett and I'm joined today by my faithful friend and co-host John Smith.
It's Friday.
How are you, John?
I'm awesome. It's Friday.
I know. Can you believe we've had almost a month off of this?
And the
Hard to
market's
believe.
getting ready to turbocharge itself.
Oh my
I
gosh.
understand the 10-year treasury is below 4%.
That stuff is so beyond me, but I got a call from a buyer the other day saying, "Oh yeah, rates are going to go down and we're going to see a big influx in the next month." And I'm like, "Okay, well, that's a good topic to bring up on
No, it is.
Real Home Stories,
So
right?"
the 10-year treasury dropped below 4.
Okay.
I know all the people that have their investments are whining and crying that the Dow Jones is down and the Nasdaq's down and gas is down. So this is just the precursor
Yeah,
for
we're seeing it.
the next 3.5 years.
Whew, from your lips to God's ears, right? I'm ready, Freddy.
The inventory thing will fix itself because I feel
Yeah,
that there's a lot of pent up demand to sell. And
absolutely.
as you always say, that these people are trapped in their 3% mortgages.
Absolutely.
And, I think sub 6% changes the paradigm for a lot of people. And so
Absolutely.
I think you'll see an uptake in listings, which will bring some buyers out. For the sellers, it'll be more of the same. And for the poor buyers, it'll be back to 18 offers.
Yeah, I know. And, I'm already seeing it. I really am. I wanted to share with you something that happened to me this week, and and my mind is blown. And I think it's realtor triggered. So I'm just going to say that I think that there's some things going on that are triggering certain reactions. I'll give you an example. Coming soon listing, right? My buyer,
I love them.
I know I hate them, but anyway, coming soon listing, my buyer saw it, drove by it, and saw that there were people there working in the house, right? Took it upon himself because I would never, and we all know I would never. Anybody that's listened to this knows I would never. Took it upon himself to knock on the door and ask the painters if he could walk through the house. Yep. So calls me and's like, I want to put an offer on this house. And I'm like, well, you can't do that because it's coming soon. And he goes on to tell me, well, the painters were there and they let me walk through and I'm really comfortable and I want to put an offer on. So in he comes, list price 550, right? Now, this gives you an idea of buyers. This is specifically for you. So 550, right? So he calls me and he goes, let's give him 560 and get 2% back. That gives him, I know I rolled my eyes too, but here's where we are. So I wrote it up for 560 with 2% back. Now, mind you, that gives them 549.9. So we're, I think, $100 under full price. So I told him, I said, look, let's go up a little bit, see what happens. So we sent it over, coming soon. The seller doesn't have to do anything, just leave, right? Listing agent says, well, let me talk to them, see where they are. They come back, John, at 585 with 2% back. Now, what does that tell you? I'm really curious to see what you think about that. What does that say to you?
Well, let me first touch on the offer that your client wanted to submit.
Right. I know.
And I have sold in coming soon before, so I will tell you, sorry, it's allergy season for me.
I know.
I will tell you that here's what a seller's thinking. If I'm going to take an offer before it hits the market to see what the market will garner for me, I want to make it a slam dunk.
Amen.
And
Okay.
so that's probably the seller's thinking. Now, as far as the 585, I personally would say to the seller, so what's your motivation? What if they come back and say, never mind? And now you have to go through all the showings and you end up getting 570 for the property and you got to do an inspection and there's no free
Mhm.
rent back. So, yes, you take a chance. Same thing happens when I have a buyer, say I'm at 550 and the buyer submits a 450 offer. First thing the seller wants to do is let's fight. And I said, why fight? I said, what they're looking for is they're looking for your lowest possible number. So if you respond, I'll take 525. Now he knows you'll go to at least 525. He probably will no longer respond to us and he's waiting for you to make that adjustment. So my suggestion to sellers is rather than get upset, want to fight, just have me convey to the buyer's agent, no, thank you.
Well, here's the big pet peeve for me. And, I'm sorry, but I can almost see it happening. And I'm not blaming it. I don't know anything for fact, but here's what I'm thinking. This agent, this realtor sat down with their seller and said, hey, we got to list it so that we get a bidding war. Let's list low and see what happens. Because what seller in their right mind gets full price, all but $100, right? And then goes up $35,000 over their list price. So you didn't consider the appraisal. You didn't consider anything other than starting a bidding war because to you, that's fun. Now you've got offers coming in that are going to be much closer to that list price, if not at it. And you want to come back and counter $35,000 higher. Granted, it is what it is. Sorry, $25,000 higher because we went in at 560. They listed at 550, but we did ask for that 2%. So buyers out there that are getting started and realtors, you can share this. I don't really mind, whatever. The bottom line is this. These houses are being listed under to make sure that they can trigger a bidding war. So any agents out there that are trying to do this, who are you really helping? Because your seller's now going to get much lower offers. It blows my mind that that's a
I
process.
don't think that's what they're doing.
Why would they counter at
Not in
585?
every situation. In this particular situation,
Okay.
and again, I wouldn't recommend this be the strategy for the seller,
Right.
is what they're thinking is you're going to be around later anyway, maybe. And
Maybe.
in the meantime, um, they really want to go on the market anyway. However, if you'd have taken a different type of strategy and just, I know this happens with buyers, they want to mix issues.
Right.
Instead of just making it clean where there's no issues, they
Right.
set themselves either up for a counter, a no, or a super ridiculous counter. These people want to go on the market, let them go on the market.
Are thinking though that they're doing the right thing by coming in at full price. They are, but
However,
yeah.
clients don't only talk to us, they talk to their neighbors. And when the neighbor says, well, we listed our house and we got $25,000 more, it sets the tone for the mindset. I agree. And sellers try this all the time. They do on you, they do on me. Well, my neighbor got 525, so I'm going to ask 20,000 more than my neighbor got, and that's my price. And if they're going to overpay, I'm overpaying, everybody's overpaying. That's not a strategy.
Yeah. And that's the opposite of what this seller did. They listed at 550, but they want 580, 585.
Maybe the
If
maybe
you wanted
the
that,
proof is in the pudding. If
right.
it wasn't such a detriment to
Yeah.
your client should say no thank you,
Well, they are saying
and then
nothing.
wait and say, "Oh, okay, Mr. Seller, you only ended up at 565. So much for the 585."
Yep, I know. And the bottom line, though, I think is that there's this misunderstanding with people thinking that these bidding wars are going to be a good thing. Keep in mind, people,
They're a pain in the
that
ass.
it's got to appraise, right? We go back to the appraisal. Your job as a realtor is to make sure that you are mimicking that appraiser. You are going to try to read his mind and see where that
Yeah.
house is going to appraise. I
It's
had another example week. Okay. Well, no, I'm sorry. Last month, I had a closing. I sold a house waterfront. Did I tell you about this?
go
Did I
ahead.
tell you about the appraisal? Well, I'll do it again, even if I did. Anyway, I meet with my client and I say 625 is your price. That's my suggested price, 625. And he goes, well, and it's funny you said, he goes, well, my neighbors and I talked about it, and we really think I could get 650, and they want me to try 650. And I said to him, look, here's the problem. I did. I said, look, here's the problem. We listed at 650, doesn't appraise, then we're dropping down to accept whatever. So as long as you're comfortable that we have to drop to meet the appraised value, it's okay.
Wonder
Well,
why. So listen, wonder why the
first the
neighbor's
neighbors want
asking you
theirs are going to get more value too, right? So anyway, we end up getting it under contract. We end up having the appraisal done. Guess where the appraiser comes in at?
625.
Oh, six. Now, luckily, the buyer agreed to bring some cash to the table and come up to 620. Now, the reason that this is so important to me to share this story is, had we done 625, would we be pushing that appraiser to give us 650? No. He probably would have said, well, look, they just did this, they just did that. I mean, we had an entire list of upgrades that the seller did. We might have got that appraiser to meet us because we weren't pushing him so far. So that's my big takeaway, is that these sellers need to understand, if it doesn't appraise and you're pushing that appraiser out of his comfort zone, he's going to dig into that appraisal completely. He's going to check square footage. He's going to check upgrades. He's going to price it out based on the real numbers. And I'm not saying that's not a good thing. That is a good thing, but it also is easier when you're within his range to get it to appraise if you're not greedy. Greed is costly.
Well, first of all, any seller that's listening to us, please don't listen to your neighbor. Your
Yeah,
neighbor has no dog in your race. They only
exactly.
want to use your either good luck or bad luck to figure out what their house is worth. So, yeah,
Yeah,
be neighborly, be nice. But, why would you ask the pharmacist if you need a kidney transplant?
exactly. Right. I mean, there's so much truth to what you're saying, because we really are up against this. When we sit down with sellers right now and sellers hear us, we want to get you the best bang for the buck. We make more
Hey,
money,
commission.
right? We make more money. Everybody wants your price to be as high as it can possibly be.
Right.
Buyers are not going to come in and start, like hiding and lying and doing whatever they want to do. We just need to make sure that the numbers are real numbers, because those appraisers are going to have their feet held to the fire. And in this situation, I believe, and I could be wrong, but I believe that we would have got the 625. Pulled my numbers, and I'm patting myself on the back a little bit here. And we talked about this before, but the proof is in the pudding, right? And when I go back over the 21 years that I've been doing this now, or going on my 21st year, I am at 98% list to sell. So my sales price over 21 years is 98%. That's what you need to be asking your listing agent. How much should I list for, and what can happen if I'm wrong? Because 98 is a pretty good number, right? That's an A. I'll take it. And we're not talking about the last year or two. We're talking about the last 21 years. So keep in mind that your listing agent is doing their job to make sure that you know exactly what that house, or close to what that house, is going to come in appraisal wise.
If
It's easy.
if you're in a traditional neighborhood and you're selling,
Yeah.
the variables between your house and 80% of the neighbors' houses is very close. Here's the thing that buyers think. This is a good thing that we both represent buyers and sellers. Hey,
Yeah.
Mr. Seller, I hear you. You want 650 for your house? Here's what may happen to you. You're
Exactly.
going to go on the market and you're going to have showings 2, 3, and then the feedback is going to be sparse and we're going to get really nothing and we're not going to know what to do. And we don't really need specific written feedback to read that. What the buying public said to you is no, thank you. And so
Exactly.
sellers will say to us often, well, just get them to make an offer. Well, that's
Not how it works.
because they don't get a chance to talk to you. So they don't know what your thinking is. So consequently, they don't want to risk you rejecting. Nobody likes rejection. So
Right.
if
Nobody.
you think they're going to throw out a 626 and you're going to go, oh, damn, I take that. They're not here to read your mind. What they see is, here's what they see: overpriced seller leads to difficult seller. Difficult seller leads to a pain in the ass transaction.
100%.
That's why they don't do it.
100%.
They may save it. If you go onto the various sites after you put your listing on, you're like, damn, that bitch had 500 views. I
Yeah.
only had 4 showings. It doesn't take a genius to say the buyer said no, period.
Exactly. We have strategies that we try to do to get you the best offer. Sellers. So we're talking about sellers now. And your agent's experience is what is going to really matter in this ball game, because you could have an agent that's only been licensed for 2 years and they're really good at this market. But this market's very short term, and there's going to be some really strong eye-opening events that happen to these agents that have been just listing agents at the top of their game, and they're throwing numbers out there, and then all of a sudden they're not getting those prices.
Worse than that. They
Yeah,
lack through
yes.
various to be able to speak. And I'm not going to call it a seller objection. The seller's saying, well, how about 650? And then you have to say, maybe. I mean, I certainly make more, so I would want you to make more.
What I
But
told
what if
this seller,
what's your plan B? What's your plan B
right,
when they reject 650? Where are you
right,
going to go? And don't tell me 625 because they already know that. So now that you were overpriced, now they're waiting for the blood and then the sharks start swimming the tank. And now you're down to 605. And you're like,
exactly.
what the hell happened? You
Yep.
didn't
Well,
listen to your agent.
that is the truth. That is what we're dealing with. We are looking at sellers, and I'm talking specifically about sellers right now, but we're looking at sellers that have the mindset that their house is going to be this exceptional jump in the marketplace. And here's the facts. Your house is probably not very special. I'm sorry to say it. It's probably got
If you're
five
in a
other houses
neighborhood,
that are
if
going to
you're in a
fit that
neighborhood,
criteria.
they built 4 different models in the neighborhood
Yeah.
and they run about 100 square feet between the 4 different models.
Yeah.
Give me a break.
And I ran into a situation the other day too that really blew me away. It's a listing that's coming on, hopefully, may end up going to Relo because he's relocating. And I don't know if his company's going to force him to go with Relo Company. But nonetheless, went out there, sat down with them. They bought a house for me 4 years ago at like 500,000. Went in there, they completely renovated this house. It is so gorgeous. It's unbelievable what they did. They took trees down, they put up horse pastures. You know what I mean? This place is amazing. And I'm listing it at $1 million. Like literally, we're talking 500,000 over 4 years. That's what's happened in this market. Now, granted, they probably put 200 into it. So they're still going to make 200,000 plus dollars off of this purchase. But when people are looking right now, they have to understand that when you look at somebody's listing from 5 years ago and what they paid for it, it is none of your business what they get for it now, right? Like, good for them. Don't look at what somebody bought a year ago and say, oh, well, now I'm not going to let them make $100,000 in a year. That's just
Well,
crazy. Well,
that's
what?
that's that's the downside to the Zillows of the world where they show you the last listing. Now, I'm not advocating that we hide
Right,
information from the
right. But it's
consumer.
not relevant.
However, do we look? Yeah, we look. I go down in the tax record in the MLS and it
Yeah.
says last listing date. They actually had it on the market 2 years ago and they canceled. Or, oh, and then 3 years before that, they actually had it on the market. And then I go up and look at the current pictures and then I go down and go, I see one bathroom was renovated. Client sees that too. They
But the,
search more
the
than we
key is that the market in the last 2 or 4 years has
double.
crept up like nothing, right? I mean, I don't want to say doubled, but I'm really kind of there, right?
50% increase?
It has. It's insane. But together we can figure all this out. Together we can make sure that we understand exactly what's going
Hey,
on.
the buyer's trying to justify a value. I think, Sue, I think that that seller in your scenario where we started, the
Yeah.
585,
Yeah.
either was not talked out of a bad response or was encouraged by somebody who should know better into a bad response.
Yeah.
And
I think,
I would have said it differently. You would have said it differently.
yeah.
However, we have the right to say what we want.
Yep.
They have the right to
Absolutely.
do what they want. Only
Absolutely.
time will tell if the seller lost in that deal.
Think that too, the realtor has to keep in mind. It's so important for the realtor to keep in mind that if you are making your seller chase a price, right, that you know is not going to appraise, you're setting them up. You're setting them up for a big loss. The
So,
pulled comps,
so,
550 was fair.
so
Yeah,
if you've been a licensee
yeah,
for less than 5 years, so 2019, right?
yeah.
You have never seen an underappraisal. So you don't know what it is. You don't know how to deal with it. You
Yeah.
don't know how to explain it. And you figure, I'm winging it. He's winging it. Let's just wing it and we'll
Let's
figure it
just
out.
Just wing it. Isn't that the truth?
because it's always a lender for a loan officer for those people who don't know. But I did that for 20 years. And I often have conversations with people like me who spent 20 plus years doing it. And they
Yeah.
say, why do these deals blow up at the last minute? I said, because we originated loans before computers. We had to read the guidelines. We had to know how the guidelines applied. These people go AUS findings, except plus. That's not originating. And then it gets to underwriting. The underwriter goes, what? And it kills the deal. And then the loan officer goes, I'm really sorry. I didn't know about the such and such. And we're angry, right? So they don't even know about under appraisal. They don't know how to spell under appraisal because
Yeah.
their skill set is not broad enough for them to understand. Well, if I take 50 grand over and I'm a cookie cutter in the neighborhood and I happen to be the second smallest unit in the neighborhood, how do I get an under appraisal?
Right.
So
Exactly.
you can't teach this. This
You can't.
comes from 20 years.
It comes from learning, absolutely experience. We talk about agents that are green.
No
And it's
offense
not
to
a
them.
bad thing. It's not a bad
No
thing.
offense
It's
to you.
just
No offense.
they don't know yet.
No,
They just don't know. And when you've been in a boat that, has led you upstream and you're paddling, you learn how to maneuver, right? Those challenges, because you have to paddle against the current 90% of the time in this industry. In the last 10 years, last 3 years, has been like smooth sailing, rolling down the river, right? Now all of a sudden things are shifting a little bit and people are going, oh, what do you mean? I'm not going to get that. I'm not going to get this value. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do that. You got to listen to your realtors that are actually experienced and sitting down and explaining to you why you want your house to be priced correctly. It's so, so important. And then another thing that also leads to, John, is ethics, right? Like we go through fair housing and ethics every 2 years as a realtor. We get CE hours every 2 years. It's necessary to make sure that we're being fair, we're being honest, we're being forthcoming. I mean, to me, that's probably the most important thing when I look in the mirror is that I can sleep at night knowing I did my absolute best. Could somebody get you $10,000 more if they're crazy and they want to try it? Sure, it could happen.
yeah,
You asked me earlier what I do with my sellers, and I literally have a game plan. When I tell them 625 in this example, and they say, let's try 650, I say, okay, but let's try it for 30 days. Because realistically, if we get 30 days on the market, your values are going to start dropping significantly. So we need to drop along with that. We need to be ahead of that. When a
just
house
price
has
at
been on the market for
625.
30 days now, John, in this market, what does that tell you? Like, honestly, what do you do?
So what's the feedback?
Forget feedback. Like you're looking as a new agent with a new buyer at this one house. You're not the listing agent, you're the buyer's agent, and you see 30 days on the market. Now you're pulling it up. If you're anything like me, you're pulling up the history and you're going, wait a minute, did this drop? Why is this thing on the market for 30 days? And then you're going, well, what's wrong with it? Like you're starting to process what could be wrong with this listing. Did it go under contract to come back on?
That's why I go through the pictures backward, not
I know,
forward.
I know.
Go
It's
through the
funny.
pictures backwards because agents like to bury the crappy picture
Yeah,
of the
I don't use them.
basement.
Right. I'll have 20 pictures before I have 30 with 10 of them being crappy.
Yeah.
Like I will literally just put 20 pictures.
But the thing is sellers will often hire somebody, right?
Yeah.
Anybody, but they're not using the same skill. Like, I'm not going to say a house is like brain surgery because they're different. However, I think it's important that water not come in when it rains at your house,
Very
whether it be
important.
the roof or the walls or
Right.
the basement.
Yeah.
But they're willing to bet the farm, right, on a who is not qualified, right? And then when the deal goes sideways, God forbid it goes south, but when it goes sideways, then you get a review that the person was the worst agent in love. You hired them.
Yeah. You hired them.
You have to
There,
accept some responsibility.
right.
You have to say, look, I made a bad decision, right? We joke about you made a bad decision at a bad place in your life. Now it's your opportunity to make the right decision. Why risk the surgery? Why risk the sale of your property to an unknown commodity?
I'm showing probably 50 houses a week, easy, to different buyers. I'm probably out there looking at 50 houses a week easily.
God bless you.
And I can tell you, I know it's not fun, but I can tell you that the buyers that are going in, once they've lost two or three to multiple offers, which we're already back at, you know what I mean? So I'm already there. Once they lose two or three, they start getting anxious. They start getting upset. They
Yep.
start
They
not
start
understanding
blaming.
what's going on. Right.
They start blaming.
Absolutely. And the example of today being that this guy got full price, and then wanted $35,000 over tells me that the agent is in the background saying, "Hey, dude, I think you're going to get more. We already have showings scheduled. We already have this. We already have that."
Right.
The bottom line is he's forgetting, this listing agent is forgetting that we pulled comps and that the comps are 550. You're forgetting that I actually did my job and I know the value of this house is 550. So we're giving you full value. An appraiser might come in and give you some more. But guess what? They might do what happened in my first situation, and they might give you less because
It
this was
happens.
not completely updated. You know,
Always
I mean,
in real estate, I learned this. It took me, the first year in mortgage business was a tough year for me because this situation is learned, not taught. So
exactly.
delivering bad news, right? You learn to deliver
Always
bad news,
sucks. Yep.
but
Yep. Always done.
you have to talk to your clients about cause and effect.
100%.
Cause. So you want to say 585, right? But what's
Absolutely.
the effect? And we're not here to fight. It's not
Right.
personal.
Right.
However, I will tell you the buyer knows that you've made a shitload of money on your house in the last 5 years. However, we're not here for that.
Right.
But you have to think about, I have a buyer sometimes and they'll go, yeah, we'll use your number, 550, right? I want to offer him 525. And I said, okay. When he says no, what's your plan B?
Move
Wait for
on.
it.
Do tell.
Sometimes it's so quiet in the room, like you could hear dust sliding down the drywall.
Yeah.
And I wait for it. What's
Yeah.
the plan B? What's the plan B? Why are we trying this? Is your goal, here's cause and
Yeah.
effect. Is your goal to piss them off? You're a listing agent. You're a buyer's agent. Seller's been in the house 45 years. And
Yeah.
you're going to try to lowball them and tell them that their house is dated. They live there. That's never going to hunt.
So let me also talk about something that I know I bring up in almost every podcast because live and breathe this stuff. But from a buyer, right? When you get this offer sent over, and we remember the 1,000 piece puzzle because we say it every time too. It's not a 3-year-old's puzzle. This is actually so many pieces that go into play. But when you get that 1,000 piece puzzle and it's presented to you in the form of an offer that is meeting all of your required expectations, right? And you say, let's wait for multiple offers. Let's just give it the weekend. Let's just do this. We've done this before. Then you get an offer that's $25,000 higher, right? But maybe it's FHA or maybe it's no money down or something else, right? And this other offer has all the other pieces that lined up, except it's $25,000 less. And you're going, well, do we take a chance on this buyer that is willing to pay $25,000 more, but looks like they have a much higher rate. They're not putting any money down. They don't have anything in the game. Your realtor's response to that is what's going to really matter. So sit down with the scenario before you interview your listing agent. Sit down with the scenario, with a multitude of scenarios, and say, how would you want me to handle this? Because if that agent is telling you, hey, price it low so we get into a multiple offer situation, fire them. That's
You
my
have
opinion.
to.
Fire them. Do not hire them.
You don't
If they
have
sit
to.
down with you, right, and they want to play games and they want to set up some scenario that you're going to wait for the weekend and you get an offer in that is absolutely everything that you expected as a seller, take the offer. Right? Take the damn offer. What are you doing? I have
Reminds
another
me,
one.
it reminds me of one of your stories, Sue, and I have them
Okay.
too, where
Yeah.
the agent will say, the agent, a brand new, hits the market brand new, and it'll
Yeah.
say down in the agent remarks, need to have best and final by Monday.
Can't
right?
stand it.
Oh, I know you
Right.
hate that. Here's
I
what
hate it.
happens: Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and your client next Tuesday, right, says, "Hey, I see the property's still on the market." And then Thursday, your phone rings and you're looking at your phone and you're like, "That's the dude from that showing I had last
Yeah.
week." And he says, "Hey, Sue, how you doing? Yeah, my property's still available. Are your people still interested? Yeah, not at the list price though."
Yeah, exactly.
So
If they're still
don't
even
do that.
interested.
I
Right.
hate that. Best and final by Monday, by
Well,
Sunday at midnight.
yeah, best and final is means I don't know how to negotiate. So I'm going to just let other agents give us their best and final offer, and I'm going to leave it there because I don't know how to negotiate. That's what it means. Literally, best and final due by 12 o'clock means I'm lazy. I don't know how to do my job. And I'm just going to accept whatever terms come in, and then we'll just decide which offer we're going to take. I'm not even going to try to get you more money.
The agent you were talking about earlier, or
Yeah.
agents,
Yeah.
listen, for new people, God bless you. I hope you make it 40 years without the gray hair that I got, but I hope you
Right.
make it
Yeah,
40
you can
years.
see mine too, and I don't want to show it, but
The I need an offer by Monday at 5, or we have 8 offers. I got to tell you, the average agent who receives 8 offers probably can't tell me the difference between 5 of them, not even 8 of them, to a general $500, because they don't know how to calculate what it costs to buy and sell. And
here's
so,
another.
listen, you can use the calculator in Bright,
Yeah.
but that's only if the information is put in correctly. Back to the lenders today with 4, 5, 6 years experience, they just type it in the system and they hope that what they're typing in, the system will accept. If the system accepts it, they don't go back through and make sure they didn't make a mistake,
Right.
right? Same thing. They just wish upon wish and they take an offer and they hope for the best. And when it doesn't close or it underappraises or the buyer
Yeah.
can't get financing, it's,
Yeah.
oh, shucks. And then try to go back to the other 5 or 8 people that wrote offers. And most of those agents are going to say, "What? We found another property," right?
I had another story that happened last week, and I've been busy. I mean, I've been busy. I've been writing offers. I've been out and about and killing it right now. So it feels like the spring is coming. But called this lady and wrote an offer for her, and she wanted to do an escalation clause. Now, the agent, I might not like him either, but here's the bottom line. Part of our licensing says we are going to submit whatever we're given. So I call this agent and I'm talking to her and I'm like, look, my buyer's coming in at this, but she'll escalate up to this. And immediately the agent says to me, "Oh, my seller doesn't want escalation clauses." And I was like, okay. I said, "I understand your seller doesn't want an escalation clause, but we're not going to come in at that. Does your seller not want to consider a higher offer? If something comes in, do they not want us to beat them out?" And she's like, "We're just not doing escalation clauses."
She
And I'm
can't
like, "You can't.
calculate the
You
net.
fail as an agent. You're a shitty agent. Excuse me, but you're a shitty agent."
You can't calculate the net. As I said to
It
you,
doesn't matter. The bottom line is,
that's why they won't take it. They
but that's
can't calculate the net.
not the seller. That's not the seller. That's the realtor. And the realtor deserves, excuse me, the seller deserves to know all of the offers and what they're willing to go up to.
Yeah.
So if I put an escalation clause in there, it is only a realtor's opinion, right? To not accept that escalation clause. And you can sit down with your seller and you can say, "Look, I don't think we should deal with an escalation clause, but that's between you and your seller. The seller has the right to know that this person is willing to pay up to 350,
So
340, 350."
we have to both stop assuming that because you have a license, you all have experience.
Right.
It's in
I
any
know.
industry. You can go to construction agency, "Oh, he has an MHIC license. Oh, he must be good."
They need to go back in these CE classes, right? Licensees need to go back to basic understanding. The one, two, threes. If you get an offer, you have the
Present
legal
it
responsibility to present it to your seller.
because you work for the
That's
seller.
1 + 1 = 2, right? It's that simple. You do not have the right to legally say, and this is very clear,
I
you
say
do
this all
not
the time.
have the right to legally say, my buyer or my seller does not want to accept an escalation clause unless you have previously sat down with the seller, explained to them that you may have people coming in with an escalation clause. I know, John, nobody's ever done that. Nobody's ever done that. But
They couldn't
you
spell
get it.
escalation.
Right, exactly. So now the seller is not getting the full picture, and the seller is not being taken care of in the way that they should legally be taken care of. This is going to backfire on a lot of these agents that sit on the
Doesn't
phone with
matter.
another agent
Doesn't matter.
telling me, who's been doing this for 20 years, my seller doesn't want to even consider an escalation clause. I want to say, everything inside of me wants to say,
Do it.
I'm not going down that rabbit hole. But the bottom line is that we are trying our best every day to go out there to show ethically what's going on, to do our legal responsibility for our client, whether we're working with buyers or sellers, and to present exactly what is the best solution for this person.
So I would bet drinks for everybody that if I took 100 random real estate agents in a room, put a
Yeah.
scenario on the blackboard where I
Yeah.
showed an escalation and said, now, based on this price, this property in this jurisdiction, being the outstanding mortgage balance, closing on this date, what's the seller's net? Both
Yeah.
both at the list, at the offer price, and at the escalation. I won't have 5 people answer that question correctly. So if you are going to do an escalation, because I got burned on one in the fall, and the great and wonderful Oz, she could
Yeah.
not calculate the net. And so we didn't get the contract, and her seller lost out on $16,000.
Yeah. I think you need to include the net sheet,
Yes, you
maybe.
do, because
So,
you
yeah,
got a bulletproof dummies.
when you said, and it's sad that we're there. And honestly, I think that the newer generation, and certainly not all of them, but a lot of these young agents that are coming into this market, you said it earlier, they don't know anything except, look at that offer, because it's been very smooth sailing, right? And the bottom line is, how many people, I'm trying to forget about the address because I don't want it to haunt me. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to carry
I'll
that
tell
loss
mine.
with me.
I'll tell
But the
mine
bottom
right
line
now.
is,
In fact, if you piss me off enough, I'll put her name on this too, right? I'll
I know.
tag her name to the fact that she cannot calculate an escalation or a seller's net.
And it's a shame because these sellers, they earned your business. If you knew that you just screwed your seller out of 10 grand,
I don't care.
because you said we don't want to consider an escalation. Who's we? The seller? Exactly. What do you mean? You really want to go to the seller and say, hey, look, do you know I actually offered
Don't do it.
$15,000
Don't.
more? Because we went in, and this is a good example, and we didn't get it, so it doesn't really matter. I think the list price was 335, right? We went in at 341. And then we escalated up to like 355 or something. I don't remember exactly what our escalation was up to, but let's say that's the case. When she said we don't want to accept an escalation, guess what happened? She got 341.
Yeah,
We said,
sure.
okay, we're not going to escalate then. And so then her offer of 341 was what was submitted. Now, shame on the listing agent for not saying, yes, let me see your exact offer. Now, if that seller gets 342, right? Then guess what? You just screwed your seller out of the difference. What, $9,000?
It's worse than that. And the only reason I say it's worse than that, I'm going to tell you a story, is because we're having this conversation, but I'll tell you where it's worse than this.
Yeah.
A lot of our younger brothers and sisters in real estate
Yeah.
work on these mega teams. And I'm not saying there's anything
Yeah.
wrong with being part of a big team, and that's great
It's
and
not. Right.
wonderful. And you have
Right.
camaraderie and you sit around and talk about God knows what.
They do what they
However,
like to do. Yeah.
when the contract comes in, right, it doesn't go to you for you to break it down. Here's the list price, here's the close date, here's the concession, half
Yeah.
transfer stamps. It goes to an admin who also wonder why they say Monday at 5 o'clock. So the admin is at work to receive your offer, and the agent you submitted the offer to, she never saw it.
Yeah.
She saw the email, and then the
Yeah.
person, because it went to sales offer at the greatest American home team in real estate.com,
Yeah.
right? And the
Yeah.
agent never saw it. And so somebody who doesn't buy and sell with clients each and every day help the seller make a decision based on their skill set. How about that?
So
Their set.
let's look at this too and ask yourself, and I know the answer for you and I know the answer for me, but how many deals do you write without checking comps? I know the answer for you is zero, and the answer for me is zero. But if you're a realtor and you're listening to this, nobody can judge you except yourself. You're just listening to us talk. How many offers have you sent out without checking comps? Because I see it all the time.
Yeah,
There's
but
no way that these agents, some of these agents are checking comps before they offer. They're
I would
giving,
say this. Yes, I check. It's simple, easy. I just come back out of that search findings, click on
yeah,
closed, 0 to 180 days, search
very
again,
easy. Yeah,
look at the
it's easy.
closed, and go, oh, that's my house. That's the one we're seeing Saturday.
Yeah,
Oh, and that's my house. And one is 335, the other one's 341. And the active, which is the same size, but is in worse condition than the one we're seeing, that one is at 317. Well, there's your bracket right there. However, I will tell you this, that most of the buyers, and I don't do a lot of buyers, but most of the buyers that I end up helping say to me this: hey, I want to see this house. And then they'll say, I want to write on it. And they'll say, here's a couple properties that I found that I think that this is really the number on the property. And I say, right, especially with foreclosures, right? So what'll happen is if it's a fudge factor of 5, 7, 10 grand, I'll
yeah,
say to them, listen, I know what you're going to write. You're going to write 341, but they're asking for 350. Here's the deal. Hear me out on this, and then you can decide what you want to do. The goal is to get them under contract, right? Because if you had 50 to go right on, you'd write, didn't get your number, you'd write, didn't get your number, you'd write, didn't get, somebody will
yeah,
eventually
yeah.
take it. However, there's 8 people writing on each one. Will somebody overpay? Absolutely. So your goal is to get it under contract. That gives you a pause, a deep breath, and then you can analyze if this is some, especially if you have inspection. I will tell you this though, sellers, if you jam the buyer, right, in the negotiations on the contract, and you're allowing them to do a home inspection, they're going to eat your lunch
Yeah,
because
I think that,
they're going to write up outlet didn't work.
yeah,
Outlet cover broke.
yeah. There's
Ceiling fan wobbled a little bit.
We've been in deals in transactions that we've had to have the buyer and the seller in separate rooms for closing because of things that have happened. And yeah, nobody's happy. The best transaction is when nobody's happy, in my opinion. The buyer feels like they paid a little too much and the seller feels like they took a little bit of a hit. In this market, I hate to say that that's a good thing, but it is a good thing because the unrealistic expectations of sellers and buyers are pretty extreme. So it takes a few offers. And when we're working with people that are brand new buyers, right? First time out, and they're like, what? They look at you like you've lost your mind when you say, full price is not going to do it for this property. They're like, what do you mean? Why would anybody expect anything over full price?
Tell you who's
Well,
worse than that. I'll tell you who's worse than that first time buyer who's been in their existing house for 40 years. You might
right.
as well die on a stake because they're like, well, I need a whole month to think about this one.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
need to go home and psychoanalyze the numbers.
Right.
And I'm like,
Well, we're talking about both sides of the transaction right now, right? We're talking about the buyer coming in low and then the seller getting upset, or we're talking about the buyer coming in high. The bottom line is, guys, that there are things that can take place. And, they're tricks of the trade. We've talked about tricks of the trade before.
yeah,
The buyer has the opportunity to take some of those expenses off the seller. Now, the sales price is not the whole name of the
the
game,
sales
right?
price is not the net.
When your agent is really good at their job and that they can look at and play appraisal, because that's what it is. We have to play appraiser. We have
Unless
to
it's
say, if
cash.
I were the appraiser coming in here, this is the value I'm going to put on this house. If you push that person too far, you're not going to get your sales price. If you don't offer enough, you're not going to get the transaction. So here's where you got to play a little bit differently, right?
Yeah.
Your offer needs to have the other pieces of the puzzle that work to the benefit of the seller. Now, example, 13 offers. I had a house that had 13 offers on it. We came in, we did, I think, what, $7,000 or $8,000 over appraisal. We paid transfer and recordation for the seller
That's a smart
because
one.
that was another $3,500 or whatever that we saved them. So we were not the highest offer. We were the safest offer. We gave them
Right.
security to know that they could accept our offer and not have to worry about going back on the market. We did inspections before the offer was submitted. I called the agent and said, look, can we do a walkthrough? We talked about this with your inspector. Who was that? Dave, right? Your inspector came on, Dave, doing the walkthrough the day before. It's not a full inspection, but it certainly gives you all the pieces of the puzzle that you need to be
Walk
comfortable
and
with.
talk. Called a walk
Walk
and
and
talk.
talk. That's what it's called. We went in, we did that. We came in with an appraisal gap. We came in and paid the buyer's side of the transfer and recordation. That was why we got that deal done, right? The other agent was smart enough to go, wait a minute. They're not the highest price, but they did give us the most security. And so we're going to accept your offer.
That's all the
That's
seller
what they
should
should
care
be. That's
about.
what everybody should be doing, right? Looking at,
However,
they don't. They don't do it.
I don't get it. If something physically impairs you, you're down at Hopkins beating the freaking doors down, trying to see the specialist. It's only in the country 1 month a year. However, you're selling your house, which is probably the largest investment that you'll ever have in your life. And you're going, is Aunt Susie still licensed?
Exactly.
Can we dig her out of retirement so
I
she
have
can
a
list our
friend,
house? Come on.
right? I have a friend, if we're going to call her that, because it doesn't really matter. She's more of an acquaintance, whatever. Our kids went to school together. Nonetheless, mm, she listed her house with someone else. And I told her what to list her house at. I told her, I said, this is where you need to be. This is what you need to do, blah, 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 blah. Well, she listed it with somebody else so she didn't damage our friendship, whatever. Guys, if you don't trust your friend that's a realtor, then go with a different realtor. It doesn't really matter, but make sure you check everything. They went with another agent. They ended up $40,000 less than I would have sold their house for. $40,000, right? Because of a few things. Like you said in the very beginning of this, doilies, right? Like that agent came in there and did not hurt their feelings, did not say they needed to do anything different, did not advise them on staging, did not tell
No,
them what should be taken
didn't
down.
talk about condition.
No, right. They
We
came
just had
in,
one.
they took some camera pictures with their phone or with the camera. They posted them. They did not do what they should have done, right? And the house sold for $40,000 less. It took
And
everything in my power to sit there and be quiet
and
because I'm like,
and
what are you doing?
and everybody got what they deserve.
Exactly. I mean, at the end of the day, I even sent them testimonials and like, I'm a very outgoing person. I'm a very extroverted person. And so, it's hard for me to keep my mouth shut sometimes, but I do it because it's the right thing to do in some situations. And I didn't say anything to them. I did at one point say to her, if you want any advice, let me know. I can't tell you as an agent, but I can tell you as a friend, I'd probably redo this picture and that picture. You want an agent, buyers and sellers out there. Buyers, if your agent does not ask you to sign a buyer agency agreement after this lawsuit, cut them off. If they're afraid to ask you to sign the document,
If they're
do you
afraid to
want to
explain
work
it to
with
you,
that agent, right? If they are too scared to say, hire me, here's my buyer broker agreement, don't use that agent. They need to be hired, period. You need to be represented, period. That just needs to happen.
oh,
Sellers,
yeah.
if you're setting your sales price without a plan and that agent's only in there taking your order, when you don't know how real estate works, don't hire that listing agent, right? You need somebody that's going to say, this is how we're going to get you the most money. This is what you need to do. This is what I'd suggest you do. If you want to list it as is, your as is price is going to be different than the price they're suggesting with some upgrades or renovations or whatever. If you want somebody to just eat your pie, then those are the agents that come in and don't ask anything of you. Am I right?
Now, I recently went on a listing appointment with somebody new here, and
You're still doing that.
yeah,
You're so
yeah,
funny.
once a week I just throw myself off the building just for the hell of it, right?
I just don't know how you do it,
I
but
just throw
anyway,
myself right off the building and go, well, at least I didn't break my arm.
I do not
Anyway,
have it.
so it was a divorce situation. I knew it was dicey, and we could go into a whole different conversation about.
Right, whole
Anyway,
podcast.
so anyway, we didn't get the listing. Okay. And the person who wanted us to have the listing was one of the two people that owned the property. And
Uh-huh.
she said the person he brought in didn't say shit. You explained the whole thing, how it works, generally what the costs are. You gave us suggestions about how to fix certain things,
Yep.
how you would take care of painting, what the house should look like. You gave us an example. You took one room, you walked us through the room and said, now apply that to all the rooms in the house. She said, I appreciated that. The other person, in and out.
And then they went with them.
However, I was so desperate to get rid of his ass.
Yeah.
Sign.
I think that there is some truth. I had a client that just told me, she's like, you refused to show me a house because I wouldn't sign the agreement. And she's like, honestly, once you pointed out that it was required by law now, I was like, but why didn't this other agent tell me that? Because they're scared to tell you that. They're scared you're not going to work with them.
Can't even read the document. What are you
They
talking
don't,
about?
right. They are so nervous about getting you to sign a document that they are willing to just act like they don't need it. And that's a shame. That is such a shame because people, once they're educated, and I believe this, I believe that an educated buyer is the best buyer you can hire.
Seller,
You know
same
what I
way.
mean? Like,
Seller too. Yep.
by all means, yeah, everybody should know as much as they possibly can and learn why you're telling them to do certain things. There's something that is a pet peeve of mine, and I think it's so funny that it bothers me so much. But if you go to a linen closet and you open the door, everybody's got pillows or comforters shoved in the bottom. I can't stand it. And I tell people when I'm at a listing presentation, can you remove that pillow and comforter or whatever's on the bottom? Can you just remove that? Now look at your cabinet. And they're like, wow, because they don't realize that having a clear visual on the base, on the bottom, makes all the difference in the world. You know what I mean? So you've got to go in and through experience, share what you've learned, share what you can bring to the table. They're going to hire you because they're going to see that you actually have the knowledge they need to get their best bang for the buck. So, my final word of the day is going to be to everybody out there, and it is negotiate, negotiate, negotiate. That word needs to be put back into these transactions. Best and final needs to go to rest, it needs to go somewhere else. Now, best and final, meaning we're going to review all offers on Friday, might be fine. You know what I mean? Give us your best and final offers by Friday. But we will then, as a listing agent, go back and review maybe the top 3 offers and then say, hey, look, why don't we see if this person that's putting 25% down can meet this sales price?
I remember.
Why are you not doing that?
I remember what I was going to think of.
Okay, tell me.
So, if you're a seller out there, you should
Yeah.
ask your agent upon delivering the offers to you to give you a breakdown, like to give you a summary with each offer and how that changes your net from what you give them in the beginning. Because I give them a sheet in the beginning that says,
Yeah.
if we listed this, this is what you owe. This is what the release fee is. These are the commissions. These are the transfer taxes, state and local.
Right.
Yeah, whether you want to offer a warranty, admin fees, whatever, what are escrows. And then I just tell them that this number is $500 more than that number. This one is $1,000 less than that number. But I guarantee you, if it was required, we'd have a hell of a lot less agents because they don't know how to do it.
Yeah, and it's a very simple process. Literally, it's plugging the numbers in online, which we already all have access to. If you have access to MLS, you have access to breaking those numbers
Yeah.
down. So the problem is that people say best and final, and then they go with best and final. They do not come back
It,
and they do
yeah.
not negotiate.
The best and
You
final
wanna
is a cop out. It's a cop
Best and
out
final
because
is
you
a
can't
cop out.
calculate the seller's net.
Absolutely. When you sit down with your seller, if you're a really good listing agent, and I mean this wholeheartedly, when you sit down with your seller with the top three, now you have a summary of like all 10 offers, right?
Yeah,
Because we're
a
going to get up
summary.
there.
It's
We're going
one
to get to the
sheet.
point where we get 10 offers
It's one
again.
sheet.
Right. Well,
7 boxes,
I
8
do a
boxes.
little, I have each offer printed out and I
I
have
put
a
that on
summary
top.
of it.
Each offer.
Right. And I sit with my seller and I say, this is this offer. It's not even in contention because of XYZ. And then we have the top three offers, right? And you sit down and you go, look, here's what this person is coming in at. Conventional 20% down. They're going to waive the home inspection. This person, conventional 3% down. They want a home inspection. Now, what if we went back to this person that came in $10,000 higher and asked them if they'd like to waive the home inspection? That's negotiating. So you go with the best top three, and then you ask the buyer's agent what they're willing to do, what their client's willing to do. And it might take you an extra day and it might take you a little bit of work that your seller deserves, by the way. But it might take you a little bit of work to sit down and then contact these buyer's agents and say, look, you're in the top three. This is what we're looking for. Would your client be willing to do it? If they come back and they say yes, now you've got the best solid offer for your client and you've done your job and you deserve to be licensed and you deserve to be in this
Yeah.
industry. And success will follow
Oh,
you.
eh,
Right? It will.
here's one. I hope you all from the real estate commission are listening. I really do. The same classes. Now you got to realize, so I took 20 years of fair housing
Right.
as a loan
Right.
officer. And I
Yeah.
got to tell you, except for about 8 words, it's verbatim 40 years later.
Yeah.
Why don't you teach commission? Why don't you require real skills for agents who are renewing their license who have less than 10 years of experience? I know it sounds like we're picking on the new people, but we are not.
We're not.
We're doing you a favor by making you level up.
If we were just starting out, we might be in the same boat, right? We might literally be in the same boat
Yeah, but see, here's the
because it's
difference.
very
Here's the
easy.
difference. Here's the difference. When we started, both mortgage and real estate. For me, I didn't have somebody on the team to wake me up, make me
No,
coffee,
no, no.
rub my back when I was having a bad day. I said, I will call your client and tell them why their loan didn't get approved. So we're not making them level up. We're creating an entire generation of softies.
Softies, yeah.
And here's the thing, it's really the commission's responsibility too. Do you know, and I'm going to put this out there, you can have a license for 100 years, never sell a house, never list a house, but every 2 years, damn it, you pass those classes and the commission don't give a crap because they just
Nope, they're
get your
getting their money.
renewal money, and your broker don't give a crap because your broker gets your monthly fees.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so we haven't really grown. All we've done is said, I passed my CEs.
right. I think that you're hitting the nail on the head, and that really does kind of summarize what we're talking about
I'm not
today by
hating new people. I'm
right.
saying hone your craft.
Well, if I'm dealing with an agent that has 10 years experience or
But
just
you
is
can't say
brand new, but they
experience.
have been taught correctly. So it's just a matter of understanding that your job and your legal responsibility, in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, and I am not an attorney,
It's to your
is to
clients.
make sure that you've done everything in your power for your client. And when
And
you
their
say
interest
best and
first.
final,
Their interest
right, when
first.
you say best and final, and then you accept it just like that, you just say, okay, this is the best offer. This is the one we're going to go
They
with.
have no skill.
You, you failed.
I'm not hating on new people. All I'm saying
No.
is we profess that we want to improve the industry, but we don't. I think
Yeah.
that if you get a license today, and I know that the Maryland Commission's doing some of this, but you are, in addition to, because now you have to show you can write a contract. Big deal, right? You think they're going to make you break down the number of addendums you need in a certain jurisdiction? They
No.
are not, because
I'm
they'd have to
surprised
turn
they're
away
not
the
doing it.
license money. What they ought to do is do it this way. You have to have successfully closed 3 transactions between your renewal. Game over.
How do you survive off 3 transactions for
It's
2 years?
not about that. It's about showing that you've honed your craft. You know your craft. You know what the addendums look like. You can read them. You can say them. You can talk about them. And you
Yeah.
understand experiences. But to have your license for 40 years, because this is what they say, I got
Yeah.
40 years of experience. Oh, horse shit. You don't. You've
You have
renewed
3
your
days.
license 20 times over 40 years,
Yeah.
but
No,
you
I'm with you.
haven't done anything.
Yeah.
Show me what you've done.
Yeah. I mean, new agents out there, look, we say it
Don't take it the
all the
wrong
time,
way.
right? Don't we want you to team up if that is what you need to do. I suggest strongly that if you're new in this business and you're coming in and you're thinking that it's going to be smooth sailing, you're going to learn the hard way. And we all did, right? Now we did. We went through that. Everybody was new at some point. And who you were new with is what matters in your future. So when they say it's the company you keep, that couldn't be truer in the real estate industry. If you buddy up with somebody that's cutting corners and that's violating the rules and changing and making it their own, then you're not helping yourself at all. You're
No,
actually setting yourself up
because
for
you're
failure.
the average of the 5 people you surround yourself with. So if
Yeah,
they're all cutters, liars, and cheats,
you are going to
perhaps you're
benefit.
probably a cutter, liar, and cheat. Now, you mentioned the team. I'm not going to advocate for teams. I am here to support new people. Hence why I told the story about jumping off the building once a week.
Yeah, he
But I
does
will
it. He
tell you
nurtures
that
people. I do not.
if you're new, you should look for an experienced broker first, right? You don't need to drive to Chile to register or to be associated with a broker because that doesn't make sense.
I,
And you should ask new agents, hear me, you should ask about what they offer as far as mentorship programs. Because I will tell you that Troy Aikman has a mentor, Tom Brady has a mentor.
you've got to understand what
You've
you're
never
doing.
done this and you want to get in the business at 23, you better surround yourself with successful people and
Absolutely.
and pay them for their time.
Absolutely. You need to understand if you're a new agent and you're just getting started that there are a gazillion people that would love to help you.
Yes,
And once you get old enough and once you're in this business long enough,
tap in.
we've talked about it before. Would I ever mentor somebody? That person would have to be self driven, would have to be
Yeah.
really like in the game and want to do well and want to excel. And, would I put them on a team? It's a debate that goes back and forth all the time. Probably not yet, but will I start my own team? Maybe. The bottom line is that they would have to be willing to understand the whole picture. And not a lot of agents play by the whole book, right?
That's
They don't follow the
this
rules.
is the mistake that the big brokers make, right?
Yeah.
They bring you in and they slam you on a team, okay?
Yeah.
And I will tell you that there's more teams than mentors. So I know that's an easy fix for all you branch manager types
Yeah.
and team leaders if you're from that particular brand. You just slam them in a team. You got them off your desk. Woohoo, right? And then if they don't make it, it ain't on you because it ain't your job to help them. You'd be better off to tell them, work on your own for a year, give it a year, tie into a mentor, somebody who's good. And then after you get to the end of that year or 5 transactions or whatever it is, Then decide, well, now I know how to write a contract. I know how to go on a listing. I know how to do the presentation. I know how to run comps. I know how to give a closing estimate, within a little bit. And then that's it.